Welcome back. So, when you see, this isn't a close look, when you see a ye like this, it's actually pronounced the old Diet Coke. There was a letter called Thorn. I don't even know if I'm holding this right. And Thorn was the last letter in the alphabet they let go. It was, it basically was TH. It made a TH sound, and then they took Thorn aside and said, we think we can do it with T and H. You're redundant. And let it go. So, but I guess they printed it with a Y because that was closest to what it looked like on the new TypeScript. Excuse me. So when you see a ye, it actually is a the. The Y means th. That's very important to remember. I guess it's not just for things like that. Like that movie, it's actually pronounced Old Fleller. We also talked about Revolutionary War, founding father era Trump would have a scam tea because, you know, they kind of famously were real into tea back then, you know, during the Revolutionary War. You're a history buff, Shoemaker. And so we had graphics make that. I think they made it a little modern. The box, the packaging was not Revolutionary War style. And so one of you wrote, actually, tea at the time would have been served in a sack. And we knew that. But when I called the control booth and said, can we get the penis tea on the sack, HR cut the line. Someone says, why do you have a mic here if you got a mic on your lapel? This is a backup mic in case anything happens to the lapel mic. And this is also interesting. There's a speaker. See that speaker? Which is right here. And it's been there from the very first show. And every night, I trip over it. Pretty cool. We said that in the new Scooby-Doo, Velma is gay. Many of you pointed out she's always been gay. She's just out now. We talked about how sometimes Fox News graphics make Joe Biden look really cool, and they had one of him wearing sunglasses, eating an ice cream cone, and then we said that looks like the poster of a movie with Jason Statham called Ice Cream Man. Well, guess what, guys? There was an actual movie called Ice Cream Man, starring one-time Late Night with Seth Meyers guest Clint Howard. And here's the poster. It's a real movie, Ice Cream Man. And if you're wondering who did the soundtrack, it was Randy Newman. No, it was that guy. In one of our jokes, we also said, somebody invent whiteout. Somebody did invent whiteout. Bet Nesmith Graham invented whiteout. Liquid paper, it was called at the time. History's first correction fluid in 1956. Shoemaker, do you know who her son was? Mike Nesmith from the Monkees. And I knew that Shoemaker would know that because the amount I've heard him go, they were my Beatles. Hey, chimpanzees are not monkeys. And I guess we said that. And I know that because before we stopped having animals on the show, we did a segment where a chimpanzee handler brought out a chimp to do a sketch. And the chimp broke free. And it was a pretty harrowing day. I hope everybody's okay with me bringing it back up again. Tore off down the hallway, ripping pictures off the wall, and went into our offices, and it was just chaos. And fortunately, everybody kind of got to safety, and we managed to close the door, but you could just hear him screeching, and it was a mess. Just so loud, and obviously, the chimpanzee was so, out of sorts. And so we called New York City Animal Control. We said, there's a monkey loose in our office, and these guys came, these two guys, pretty quickly, I should note, put on these giant padded suits, and then they went in. for about 15 minutes, and we just heard the monkey, the chimpanzee screeching, and then they came out, still heard the screeching in the background, like, ah, ah, ah. And they looked at us and said, there's no monkey in there. And we're like, what? And they go, it's a chimpanzee. They're apes. And we're like, okay, well, can you get it out? And they're like, no, because our action order that you called in, we put down monkey, and and they said they had to go all the way back to the office. We said the world's oldest dog died. We were told that's impossible because the minute it dies, there's a new world's oldest dog. Although they also wrote, it's a wrong sentence. On that note, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, we called him that. We've been told this before. You don't take the knighthood with you to the grave. So you actually would right now call him Arthur Conan Doyle. Although, and I'm not naming names, the person who took it away from you is also dead now, so. You can try to keep it from here on out. We mentioned the Jeffrey Dahmer show on Netflix. I misstated the title. The actual title is Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Because I guess it was originally called Dahmer Monster, and there was like a Glenn Dahmer. There were some other Dahmers out there who also wear prescription aviators, and I guess it was very awkward for them. They maybe had some connections at Netflix, and they're like, can you really hammer home it's not which Dahmer it's about? I said a magnifying lens. That's a flub, you sons of bitches. I shouldn't say that, because I think a lot of you said that were ladies. That's a flub, you sons and daughters of bitches. Hey, we joked that Donald Trump read Goodnight Moon to his kids, and it was from the New York City Public Library, and one of you said he couldn't have done that because the New York City Public Library did not have that book until 1972, because this is true, the librarian in charge of the New York City Public Library did not like that book. But I will note that as long as it was there in 1972, that is in time for Donald Trump to read it to his kids, based on when they were born. Point is, he never read it to them. But it is an interesting story. The reason she banned it, because you would think, what is the problem with Goodnight Moon, is she thought it sucked. Here's some questions. These are some fun viewer questions. Just a question. Who are the people who laugh? The crew. Did you hire them? I did. Why do they laugh? I don't know. Who is the dude laughing out loud in the background in every corrections take? It's adding to the comedic value somewhat. I'll give you $1 if you can guess his name. Or to put it another way, I'll give you $1. We do have international viewers, and one of them wrote, because again, we have been leading into it the last couple of weeks, I still don't know what sport the Mets play. Well, when you figure it out, tell the Mets. Woo! You guys remember, we gave you a P.O. box to send in postcards, and well, oh well, look at the jackals, look what they've done. One from Paris, one from Bodo, I'll guess that's Norway. This is the Swedish royal family, that's pretty exciting. Harrogate, Harrogate. Oh, remember we talked about Tallinn, Estonia? Well, that's my Estonian postcard. And now you guys remember, the reason I gave that P.O. box is I just said, do with it what you will. I at no point implied there was a contest or that I would do a drawing for you to get a mug. If I did, that was clearly facetious. Because if I had done that, based on what I'm hearing from our legal department, I'm in a world of Okay, so look, if you want to send a postcard to the P.O. box, yeah, do that with no promise from me. And maybe at one point I'll be walking down the hallway and someone will bump into me and one will fall, right? And I'll just pick it up and say, oh, here's an idea. I'll send them a mug. But it's not a contest or a drawing. It's not a situation where my phone's ringing off the hook from the legal department saying, what the did you do? We didn't see this script. And then you have to be like, well, there's not a script for corrections. And they're like, what the is corrections? Just mean. I'm so happy about my postcards, though. Look, if there was to be a random moment where somebody bumped into me and I found one, and then that, like, because it was cool and for no other reason, I decided to send a mug, we're going to do that in 2 weeks. Somebody, I have a feeling somebody might bump into me. So somebody said this, again, we're talking about, oh, sorry, I should say this real quick. We did a Michael Myers from Halloween sketch. Mike Scullins wrote it. He also cast himself as the part was sexy teen. Now, I should note, nobody was upset at the sexy part. Like, everybody signed off on that. There were some jackals who thought he wasn't a super believable teen. I think it's probably really unfair that his head ended up between, like, two far more believable teens. Like, you wouldn't see this and think, they're all in the same class. All right, so I mentioned this dude last week, and someone said right after you mentioned him, you smiled in a way you looked like him. And I went to the time code they gave me, and that was the face I was making. So I don't know if that's a full Mac Tonight face. And I don't know what you're implying, that any night there's like a quarter moon, I transform. My wife tries to tie me to the bed. And then I end up coming home the next morning smelling of French fries. Well, the game is up. Happy Halloween. Legal wouldn't let us play the lightning sound effect? I don't think it was the best corrections. But it was a corrections. See me in 2 weeks.